Oh, yes.
Anyway,
100%.
Anyway.
Yep, that's one of the quickest ways to kill a sale is to act desperate.
Yep.
Or to make it about you. I'll tell you one quick example. It has nothing to do with winning the seller. Actually, it completely has. It has to do with winning anybody. But before we do that, I would love to meet you that just walked in. Hi, Scarlett. Welcome. I'm Jordan. So you, question that I'd asked everybody, how many Ignite classes have you been to? Okay, so about somewhere around 10-ish, 9 maybe? Yeah, okay, awesome. And have you had a chance to work with the seller yet? Okay. Oh, congrats. That's exciting. Good for you. Now you're officially an agent. Well, awesome. And you said Scarlett, right? Okay, beautiful name. All right. Nice to meet you. So now I forgot what I was going to tell you, but does anyone remember?
Something about sales.
Not your fault. Oh yeah, killing sales, acting desperate. One of the fastest ways to. Yes, I'm getting closer. My thoughts are coming. It is. Oh yes, thank you, Sam. That was correct. So a few years ago, I was living in Edgewater in Vineyard. I had a door-to-door guy come to knock on my door, and guess what? I did 7 years of door-to-door, so I respect those people that do that. It's not an easy job, but at the same time, I'm not going to buy just from anybody, right? Or from anything, for anything. So Kirby vacuums is what he was selling, which I didn't know that they still did door-to-door for that until 2 days ago. Now in my new house, I also got somebody that was trying to sell a Kirby vacuum. It's kind of funny. But this other guy, his pitch, and I want you guys to tell me what is wrong with this sales pitch. Knocks on the door, says hi, asks if he can do a quick little demonstration. And because I have a soft heart for door-to-door people, I invited him in and said, sure, you can do a quick demonstration. I already knew ahead of time that my wife and I were not, we had just bought a vacuum, which is not a Kirby vacuum, but we loved our vacuum and it was a lot cheaper than whatever the Kirby vacuum was going to cost. So he does this little demonstration and then he says, if I get enough sales and I get to go on a trip to Texas with the company, please buy from me. What's wrong with that? Anything?
He's desperate.
He's desperate. What else? He's doing it for a trip. For who? For me? No, for him. How many of you would pay $3,000 to take it to send a stranger to Texas, right? Now, if I had the money, I would love to do things like that. You guys seen some of those YouTube influencers that do stuff like that? It was awesome. But in a sales position where he's trying to sell me this expensive vacuum to go on a trip for himself so that he can have a good time, that's not the approach. Exactly. That's exactly the point. Our job is the same. There are people out there that, again, say, hey, I'm an agent, work with me because, you know, I have this family situation or I need the income or whatever. If you're making it about you, you may get one-off random person that decides to go for it, but it's going to be more because that's the right time for them anyway than it is about you. But the more you try to make your sales approach in general about them, the better success that you're going to see. So that includes if you send emails, if you're on social media, if you are just in a one-on-one conversation with somebody, if you're on a call with someone, all of those things, before you post it or before you spread that news, think to yourself or reread it and say, how, if I was a buyer or a potential seller, can I easily see how this benefits me? And if the answer is no, rewrite it, scratch it, okay? So that's just a general sales thing, and it totally applies to winning the sellers because I don't want to say that it's harder to win a seller, but sellers value experience a little bit more than buyers do. You guys agree with that? Why is that? Because they've done it, okay, so they've bought before. So if you've never done a transaction before and they've done a transaction before, they have a leg up on you. That should only happen for a little bit. Then you'll have a leg up on almost everybody you talk to as far as how many transactions you've done in your life with real estate. Okay, but why else?
You're listing their house. Like you're the one that has to come up with the ideal, you know, everything from photos to, you know, how to market it. There's just a lot that goes into it. They're going to want someone that knows what they're doing.
100%.
Sure the house can sell as quickly as possible for as much as it possible.
Yeah. And that's our goal, to sell as quickly as possible for as much as we can, to help our sellers net as the highest amount that they can. Okay. Well, let's get into some of this material and I'll share some stories along the way. But if you guys have questions or if something is pressing on your minds, please raise your hand or let me know, speak out. Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah. Oh.
You were talking about reaching out to your friends that you haven't talked to in
Yeah.
a long time.
Mm-hmm.
My thing that I've been dying to know is what the conversation should look like, because I don't want to sound like fine and just because I'm a real estate now.
Yeah.
Not at all. So how do you just let it flow?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to you in forever, and if it comes up, it comes up. If it doesn't come up, I don't want to force it.
Yep, I agree. And that is a fear. And I have two answers to that. The first one is I think that most people, no matter how you reach out to them, if you haven't talked to them in a while, they will be receptive to whatever it is that you're saying. But I did have a friend a few years ago that kind of a similar situation. They were on the selling end of, I don't even remember what it was now, but I just remember getting this message. I haven't talked to them in years. And the message was directly, hey, I'm doing this job. Please let me know if you want to buy from me. And it was just like, oh, and in that message it said, oh, and how's your family? I miss you. Like, you guys are awesome, whatever. And it's like, yeah, but I don't really feel that from you, right? Because the first point across was the sale. So to me, is to get back into relationship with these people first before you start saying, hey, can I help you buy or sell a house? One of my methods, and this is a very common method that a lot of people use, is to use events as an excuse for me to reach out to people. It's just an invitation. You know, hey, I've got this event coming up. I thought of you guys. I know it's been a long time since I've seen you. How's the family? You know, how are you doing? Whatever. Just come to my event. So that way you're inviting them to an event, but you're not saying, hey, let me know if you want me to help you buy or sell a house, right? So things like that. It doesn't have to be an event. It could be some sort of value add. It could be, you know, if you know that they don't have a home yet, you could maybe have some sort of a buyer tips packet that you make or that you find on, I mean, Keller Williams has a ton of resources, so you can get stuff like that pretty easily and just send them something like that. So where you're giving them something as opposed to you asking for something, right? You never want to ask for something unless you've already given first, in my opinion. So I don't know if that really helps, but yeah.
Or maybe because you're trying to build your database.
Yep.
At the very beginning. And how does that conversation go? You just at the end you ask them if you can study.
Yeah, and Sam kind of mentioned it too. Like usually when you ask them what they've been up to, the natural response for them is to ask you what you've been up to, and that's when you can kind of tell them. So once they're asking for information, it's easier to tell them at that point than it is to just say, hey, I'm calling to let you know that I'm an agent. There are scripts that are out there like that. You may have seen some if you've read around. Those aren't my favorite because again, it's about me and I want to make it about them as much as possible until they ask for something or until I feel like I've given them something to where now I have their permission almost to ask for something in return. But the other part that I'll say to that is don't ever let that stop you from trying to reach out to somebody because you guys, there's thousands of thoughts that we're going to have as agents in all different aspects of the job that are going to tell us, don't do it, don't go for it, don't do this, hold back, you know, get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And if you're hearing those thoughts in your mind that says no, really take a second and think, well, why is that? Is that because I'm afraid or is that because this is blatantly wrong? And if it's wrong, obviously then do what you want to do. But if it's just because you're afraid, then take that step forward and keep going and you'll get better at it. You know, maybe the first couple of people, they don't come off quite as right and you'll start to change how you're saying that and how that comes out and you'll get better with experience.
I think sometimes too, when it comes to those genuine conversations, if you ever feel yourself not being genuine, I think that's usually a sign to stop.
Yeah.
whatever that may be.
Yeah, because hopefully they don't realize, but they'll pretty often realize.
It's either too much or too aggressive. Yeah, it'll sound
Yeah.
sales like instead of like a conversation. But a lot of times too, and this is something I'm still working on, is getting in my head what it could potentially sound like the worst case scenario. Because I seldom think the things we hear the worst in our conversations are actually
what happens. I agree. But yeah, great question. That is something that you'll have to deal with forever, because even now, I've done this for a while. That doesn't mean I've talked to every single person in my database as consistently as we're supposed to, right? So that still happens occasionally, and you just go with it. But all right, let's figure out how to change these slides since my button's not working. Okay, that's okay. I got this. All right, so we are in the last phase, transaction. I can turn off this light probably. Is that better?
Do you have any?
These ones are gray on purpose, so you shouldn't be able to see those very much, because those are classes that you've already done or that they've already been taught. But of course, you don't have to only come once.
Yeah, we start at different. No one's.
Yeah. Is that okay with you guys? Okay, thank you, Scarlett. Okay, so today we're going to talk about sellers. We're going to talk about getting the appointment. We're going to talk about the pre-listing packet, the listing appointment, and then the listing agreement, and then recap. This is a lot of fun. Sellers are in my opinion, some people have preference for buyers, but most agents prefer sellers. Any idea why? Go ahead, whoever. Okay. It's kind of funny that you say that, because I feel in today's market, buyer is actually a more sure sale than a seller. That's not normal though. Like my whole career, seller, yeah, it's a more sure sale. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time before it sells. Today's market, there are more expired listings than we've seen in a long time. And there are an increased number of listings. And so there's more competition for them. But what has the buyer pool done last year? It's gone way down, right? So the amount of people looking for homes is lower. So our approach has to be different, which is fine. The market does not determine your success. It just needs to determine your strategy and how you approach it. Yeah, then work harder and work differently. Yeah, exactly. But normally, yes, sellers are generally a for sure thing if you do it right. Why else do agents generally prefer sellers?
And millionaire real estate agent, I believe we talked about how it becomes like a two deals.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
Yep. So you'll get the deal for closing the house, but along with that comes many other opportunities to sell more homes. I have plenty of examples in my own experience that I could share with you, but whether it's a person that called my sign and I get to answer the phone and they say they're interested in a house and I get to go show them other houses because that one didn't work out. Hosting an open house, same thing. How often do you think the random person that comes in from an open house sign that home matches exactly what they're looking for? It's hardly ever. So yes, your first priority is to try and sell them the house, but if it's not the right fit for them and they're not going to do it, then you've got a potential client that you can work with to help them find a house. So that's another easy way. What is the amount of time that you spend on a seller client versus a buyer client? How does that look?
Seller.
In most cases. Sellers what?
You spend more time with the seller.
You think so? How come?
Well, you have to do everything to help sell that house. So I'm thinking the legwork is a little bit more.
Okay.
So it's marketing and then open house, follow up. But I guess just my opinion.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. I'm glad you shared it. Any other thoughts? You guys agree with Sam? Disagree with Sam? Which clientele base do you generally spend more time with, a buyer or a seller?
I think the seller.
Okay. Scarlett, why?
I've done both.
You've done both? Okay. Scarlett, why do you say maybe the buyer?
And you have to help them, make sure that they've got their pre-qualifications for this and that, and do their due diligence and just being on top of them, I would say that you're spending more time.
Okay. Yeah, it's great. And you said also from your experience, seller.
I think the seller, because a lot of times the buyer, it's like when you're buying a car. People go in, they look at all the stuff they want, they call you up, they tell you I want to go with this, this, and this. They're usually pre-qualified, done
Yeah.
that themselves, or you send them to do it that, and they're like, they have their checklist. I want da 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 da.
Yeah.
You know, they're more like boom boom, and the listing is like, hey, there's a lot more hand holding, I think, with listing
Yeah.
than
Then with the buyer.
why is this not selling? Why is it blah blah blah? Why is this? Is the price right? Did you list it too high? Did we list it too low? Why do we have to drop it? There's a lot more hand holding listing.
Yeah. That's a great point. So it kind of goes back to where we're at with the market right now. And your guys' experience is right now. And right now is a little bit different than what we normally see. So in general, and you'll get this from the MREA, the book that Sam mentioned, which if you haven't read that, that's like the #1 book to read. At least the first half of it, I would say, or so, is extremely critical for any agent. That's if you want to make money as quickly as you can in this industry in a lasting way, apply those principles and you'll get there. The truth is there's no easy money either way, right? You're going to have to do some work. I'm the bearer of bad news here. You're going to have to do work either with a buyer or a seller. Okay. It's just unfortunate, right? But in general, according to the MREA and according to my experience over the last 6 years, not just the last 6 months, buyers generally spend more time with a buyer than you do with a seller. Sellers are usually a lot quicker, especially if you have your processes down, meaning you have your own set of checklists, whether you use, there's stuff on command that you can use and you can adapt. Personally, I use Trello. Have you guys ever used Trello before? You've seen that? You looked at it? That's just what I choose to use. It's like $120 a year. But I like it because it's, for me, the most, it's just easiest for me to organize the way I want things to look and everything. But basically I have my own process of checklist for a buyer. So from the day that I meet the buyer, someone raises their hand that says, hey, I'm thinking about buying. I put their name in this checklist. I copy the checklist, and now I have a whole checklist of 120 items that I'm going to do with them or for them from that day until the day that they close and actually beyond, right, and follow up and stuff. And I have a totally separate checklist for a seller. You know, the day that somebody says, I'm thinking about selling my house, I've got a whole checklist. So I'd highly recommend that you do that for yourselves and adapt it to what you want. Adapt it to your preferences, because number one, that's going to save you so much time in the long run. On the days that you do get busy and that you have 4 or 5 clients that you're working with, it can be really easy to forget, oh, shoot, I forgot to send them cookies on this day. Or I forgot to, you know, even worse, I forgot their home inspection was due yesterday and now we're past, right? Like things like that will help keep you in good faith with their clients, making sure that you do the full thing for each of them and not kind of like just whatever comes to your mind and think that you're going to somehow remember. My wife knows this, but one of my biggest pet peeves of going to a restaurant, especially when we're in a group of more than just 2 of us, is when the server comes and asks for our order and does not write it down. Because 9 times out of 10, something is going to be wrong, right? I feel like the tip, like I'm more likely to give a good tip if they get the order right than if they just happen to remember it and I'm impressed with their memory, right? I don't care about that, you know? I want it to be correct. I think it's the same in our industry. If we write these things down, you're going to remember it. It's going to be there. But if you just try to go off of your memory, you're going to get to a point where things are going to happen. Think about it. If you go on vacation, or if you ask somebody to help you out and help your clients, how easy is it to just say, and here's the checklist, than it is to try and remember all the things.
It's small.
Yeah.
It's all the little small details.
Matters. It adds up.
I videotaped this event now, and
Oh,
it's
did you?
Exactly. My tip. Like I said, I've always been in the service industry my whole life. And
Yeah.
My tip checklist is: did you come back? Did you check on my food? Did you get my order?
Sure.
Right?
There you go.
Did you fill my drink?
Yeah, you have processes that you follow.
But that's how I was trained when I was really young by
Awesome.
really fantastic manager. The checklist, all the small things matter the
Yeah.
very most.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
That's how you get your clients.
Yeah, that's how they're impressed with you. And it's not exactly, and I love that you say that, because it's not like you have to go above and beyond. You just have to do what they expect. So when somebody comes in for food, I would imagine they expect pretty much the same thing for the most part. There's kind of a handful of things that you'd expect, that they'd fill your water, that they come back and check on you, that, you know,
If you drink coffee, that coffee better be good to go.
there you go.
My
Yeah,
grandma told
that
me
it's
that
warm.
years ago.
Hot.
Better than that coffee.
There you go. Well, in our industry, it's like I said, it's the same kind of thing, same principles. But each of you are your own business. And so you're going to have your own checklist that you're going to want to create and adapt over time. I change mine all the time. When something comes up in a transaction that I didn't do very well, or that I want to avoid a problem in the future, I put that in my checklist so that every time, even though it only comes up once in a blue moon, I'm able to avoid those types of situations again, because I've gone through it. So I don't care what system you use, whether it's Trello or anything else. Again, Command has one on there that you can do. That may be a great place to start because it's free. But do something. Have some sort of a checklist so that you can easily follow it. That applies so much with sellers. I think it's very, very important with sellers, because so much of it depends on certain timing, right? From even scheduling the photos to come out, to knowing which day of the week that you're going to list your home on. All of that stuff matters, and having it in a checklist will help you a lot. Okay, so we've talked a lot. Go ahead, Scarlett, you have some? Oh, great question. Personally, I like to on a Thursday. Any ideas why? Have you guys heard that before? Yeah. Yeah, before the weekend mainly, but not too long before, because if I list it on a Monday and I want to wait till the weekend so we have the open house, and because most buyers are going to have a better chance of seeing a home on a weekend than during the week, because a lot of people work. It's a normal thing to do, especially if you're trying to buy a house. You have to, right? Unless you have cash. But anyway, most people can come on a weekend, and so I want it to be right before the weekend. But if I do it on a Monday, by the weekend hits, it's been on the market for 6 days. If somebody's going to write an offer, they're going to say, okay, well, it's already been on the market for a week, even though it hasn't been a week yet, and they're like, the likelihood of them writing a strong offer is a little bit lower. So on a Thursday is like, okay, it's only been on market for 2 days. To them, that's brand new, but then the majority of people have time to come and see it. So yeah, I try and always list my homes on a Thursday. The other part to it is, as Ella mentioned, we do have the you guys know the listing alerts on MLS, where you can set up a buyer according to their preferences, that as soon as the home hits the market, it goes right to their email. Always use that for buyers or something like it. But it used to be that it was always the next day. It was like 24 hours after it was listed, it would get sent to their email. Now it's pretty immediate for a lot of them, but some people are set up on the next day to still receive those alerts. So that's why I don't list it on a Friday, because by the time they get those emails, a lot of times it's already Saturday, they've already made their plans, and they may not come see the house. So I like to on a Thursday, so they see it by Friday, to find a time to come and see it on Saturday. See it in their emails on Friday to come see it on Saturday. Bryce.
I'm posting my first open house tomorrow.
Awesome. It's fun. Yeah, that's a good question. I can't get too far into the details on that one because we don't have time for it, but I will say the number one thing you got to figure out is if they have an agent or not, because you don't want to ignore completely the people that already have an agent. But if they already have an agent, that's not what you're there for. You're there, yes, to sell the house, but you're there to find clients. And so you're trying to get the unrepresented buyers information. And so, but at the same time, if you straight up ask them, are you working with an agent? 95% of people are going to tell you what?
Yes.
Yes. Why? So you just go away, right? Because they know that's the right answer. So you kind of have to ask it in a way that that doesn't come quite across as that. One of the easiest ways is, how long have you been looking for a home? They may tell you for a while. Okay, awesome. Have you made any offers on a home? If they've made offers on a home, what does that tell you? They're working with somebody, right? And you can still ask them after that. But if they say, no, we haven't made any offers yet. Or another question is, how did you find this house? So a lot of times that's when they'll say, oh, my agent sent it to me. Or they'll say, oh, I just saw the sign and I decided to come in. Or I saw it on Zillow. So like, you can kind of ask those kinds of questions. But the main thing is, in their minds, you're there to help show that house. They don't want you to try and win them over yet, but with a little more conversation, you can. So my first thing is get to know them just a little bit. Say, hey, I'm just here if you have any questions. Would you like me to show you around, or would you prefer to go around on your own and then follow up with me after and I can answer any questions? Some people like one way or the other. But for sure, by the end, have a conversation with them before they leave and just say, what did you like and dislike about the house? If you could change anything about the house, what would it be? How does this match what you're looking for? I don't. I just talk to them, but there are sheets that you can make. Again, this is all just preference stuff. If you prefer to have them fill out a form or whatever, you can totally do that. And then the one thing I've started to do really the last 6 months that I think has been really helpful is on command, you can make an open house landing page for that specific open house. And so it's like a registration form. And so as soon as they walk through the door, I can either have them scan a QR code and fill it out on their phone, or I just hand them my computer and have them fill it out and just ask for their name, email, and phone number. That way I get it straight to my command in database. And then as I'm figuring out if they have an agent or not, I already have their information. So I can easily follow up with them if they don't. So those are some ideas for you. But I have a script that I've used before that's really good. Have you guys heard of Jeff Glover? You'll hear his name a lot in the Keller Williams family, but he's in Detroit. He's one of the top selling Keller Williams agents in the nation, but he also has a coaching program and he has a lot of really cool resources. So there's a specific script that I've used a lot from him that I can send to you afterwards. So just make sure I get your email by the end and I'll send that to you right. Yeah, Jeff Glover. So, okay. All right. So we kind of talked about, the difference of time that you spend between this buyer and seller. The point I was trying to make is that if you have your processes dialed in, you can do a seller contract, a seller transaction in a lot less time than you can with the buyer, because you're not out driving around showing homes, going 30 minutes to commute to go to see this house, then 20 minutes to the next, right? Like that time easily adds up. Whereas with a seller, you've got your initial consultation, but you also have that for a buyer. So those are equal. And then you've got some work that you may do before to get the house ready, but most of that is done like remotely or, by phone calls and stuff, having other people do stuff. And then you've got the listing, but again, it's actually kind of funny. I don't recommend this. I was on vacation the week that it happened, but I actually sold a house once that I never even saw. that was a random case, but that kind of stuff could happen. I've also helped people buy homes that I've never, to this day, have never even walked through, because sometimes I'll have another agent go show the home. But anyway, okay. Who would like to read this quote? Sam, go for it.
Well, these are vitals for sales business. Seller listens your ability to build it so that it's its highest level with the lowest cost and highest end.
Yeah, the lowest cost. So you guys heard of the 3 L's?
Listing, leverage, leads.
Yeah, there you go. You got it. Well done, Sam. So in the MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, have you all heard of that book, by the way? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, okay, good. The 3 L's is listings, leads, and leverage, right? So listings is one of those because it produces more business. A buyer lead is great, and yes, you can close that transaction, and it may turn into future business later down the road. That's the whole goal, right? Is that when they're ready to sell or buy later, can. But listing leads are usually pretty immediate, because what kinds of leads are you get? Like, where are they coming from? We already kind of mentioned a couple ideas. If you're getting leads from a listing, what does that mean? Yes, they're active buyers right now that are either calling about it, they're coming to see the open house, they're in the market trying to buy. So those are more likely to convert into today's transactions for you. Hey, how's it going? Welcome. You're Robert, right?
Yeah.
Sweet, welcome. Okay, so yes, you'll hear this all the time, that listings are in control. Now, here's the other thing. When as far as your commission is concerned, when is that determined? At the beginning of what? That's the question. In general, when are commissions determined? With the client. Okay, which client?
If you're listing it, it should be
Yep.
set down and agree that with the listing client. And
There you go. So would you say that a listing agent or a buyer's agent has more control over the commissions? 100% the listing, because that's when the buyer's agent is determined. There may be cases where you can convince a seller to alter the buyer's agent commission, but those happen few and far between, hardly ever. In fact, in my experience, I've never had that happen where they've adjusted. I've tried twice, but I've been unsuccessful in those attempts. So yeah.
Well, obviously there's certain companies out there that claim to be flat fee people, and so they think
Sure.
everybody else should be flat fee, so they offer a flat fee price.
Mm.
And I've seen it as low as, you know, a couple $100 for the
Yeah.
buyers. It's like,
Yep.
it's like, I don't, you know.
I helped one of my friends, one of my close
I don't wanna
friends.
waste my,
Yeah. So, and everybody's going to have their own opinion. I'll share mine since I'm teaching this class, but I helped one of my friends buy a house and it was a $500 commission, when if it was a 3%, it would have been 10,000, right? So it's a pretty significant decrease, 5% of what it would have been, right? He doesn't know that though, because in my opinion, it was at a time, it was during the COVID years, which you guys may have heard about by then, that times were crazy. It was very normal for you to have a listing and for you to get 30 offers within 3 days. That's not exaggerating at all. Happened a lot. And so I was helping a buyer in that situation, and we found a listing that he really, really wanted that worked really well. And he wasn't the strongest of buyers. So I knew that we had a hard chance of competing, and somehow the seller was willing to accept his offer. And I think a big part of it was because the commission was only $500. Not very many people did offer on that. And he got it. And he's still living in that house, and eventually he's going to sell. He was trying to sell 6 months ago and couldn't qualify for the home he wanted. But like, I'm in contact with him. I still have that relationship. So even though I didn't really get paid much at all for that one, the nice thing is though, with the market where it's at right now, because it's harder to sell a home, that commission on average has gone up. So you shouldn't see that very often, but there are times where you'll still see a very low commission. And it's up to you. You can write in with your offer. This was actually one of those times that I did try to up the commission on it, where I sent in with my buyer's letter, or my buyer's offer, a request to increase the commission to, I think I did 2% or something. And they declined that, but they accepted the rest of the offer. So I was just like, whatever.
I've also dealt with some builders that
Yeah.
their policies where, you know, they're not cooperating with agents right now because
Right.
You know, they feel like they have a marketplace.
Yep.
Dean told me about he said, oh, well, this property is not the MLS, so we're not paying a commission on it.
Yeah.
You know, you need to know that up front before you start showing your agents that, I mean, your clients, that letting your clients know that
Yeah.
the buyer representation agreement says that you will be paid, and
Yep.
so we need to ask for the seller to pay more.
Yeah. And again, that's up to you guys on how you want to go about it. I've never charged a buyer for helping them buy a house ever. And I don't think I ever will, unless that just becomes the norm for the industry. But that's just me. You can do that or not. But my thing, as Natalie pointed out earlier, is all about relationships. And if you're going to buy a house, you have down payment, you have closing costs. And in addition to that, if you have to pay an agent fee, to me, that's over the top for most people. And they're not going to love that. And I just would rather keep them as a client forever than to get this one transaction. Yeah. And again, only because it's been once in my whole career. So if that happened more often, then I'd probably change my strategy. Which he has. Not 10, but he sent me 2. His brother. Exactly. So it just spreads. I could have, it's true. Yep.
Pressure's on.
That's right. Yeah, you totally could.
That's Bill.
Exactly. And so, yeah, making sure that relationship to me is more important than anything else.
Yes.
And so,
That's how you have a business.
yeah, exactly.
Let me get this clear.
Mhm.
It is the seller who's paying.
Yes. Yes. Good question. So the way it works is you have the exclusive right to sell agreement, the ERS, that you as an agent will sign on behalf of the brokerage. with the seller. So they're agreeing that if the house sells, if and when the house sells, if it's within this time frame, that they are going to pay a total of X amount. Usually 6% is pretty common, right? And of that 6%, how much goes to the buyer? That's in the bottom half of that paragraph, and it's usually 3%. So that means the remainder goes to the seller's brokerage. So then that's when that's determined. When that listing goes live on the MLS, at the very bottom, you'll see BAC, buyer's agent commission, and a percentage. And so that notifies buyers and buyer's agents of how much the commission is set for. And unless specified otherwise, or unless agreed upon otherwise, this is what it's going to be. And again, I would say probably even 98% of the time, that is what it's going to be, is that buyer's agent commission, unless you just
You
change
have
it.
very little respect for the listing agents who don't have that. Well, who are such superb negotiators that they negotiated your buyer's commission down to 1%.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's pretty common that they're 2.5 or 3%. Most of them are going to be that way, but you will see some that are not. So it's up to you. You get to decide on how you want to approach that as a buyer's agent. But we're talking about sellers, so we'll stay in that field for now. But that's when it's set. So you have that's one of the other advantages of being more of a seller's agent than a buyer's agent, is that you have a little more control over that commission. Go ahead.
For homes that are, see, like,
Uh-huh. Yeah. Great question. Oftentimes they are, but there are times where those are lower as well.
I'm just gonna ask, I'm gonna try and do
Yeah,
this
those would be a
now.
little bit less, and that's pretty understandable
when
too.
you see them, going nowhere, and the reason is
At least for the buyers, right?
people are getting,
Yeah.
stock,
Mhm.
and so you have all these agents that are making, $300,000.
Yeah. And this is there's a whole spectrum, right? Like I read this book called Spin Selling, which is, in my opinion, the best sales book that we can read as
What?
spin selling. It's by a guy named Neil Rackham, who did tons and tons of research about it. It's my favorite sales approach for a transaction of this caliber. If I was selling shoes, then that might be I wouldn't use those principles, but this is kind of a bigger deal where it's not necessarily something that decided in 1 minute. But in there, he gives this chart of a scale, those old fashioned scales that kind of go like this. In a customer's eyes, if your 3% commission or the 6% commission is heavier than the value you're giving, are they likely to do it for that price? No. But if you can show them that your value, that 6% is actually a good deal for them because of all the value that you're giving them, then that's when they go for it. So you've got to build that value up, or just change your price down, which is not recommended, right? But you got to build that value up. And this is some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, is how to build that value so that when it gets time to talk about the commission, that they feel like, yes, they almost are happy to pay that because they know what they're getting for it. That makes sense? So in the listing consultation, is that the first thing you should talk about? Commission. Why not?
You gotta do your value proposition.
Yeah, you got to go through the value. What you think they know about what you do versus what you do is usually there's a gap, right? They may know some of the things that you offer, but they may not know everything and why it's so important for them. And so that's conversation, is to help bridge that gap so that when you do talk about the commission, it's like, yes, I'd be happy to pay that. That totally makes sense. I get less pushback lately from my clients about the commission than I ever have before, since I've started applying some of these things, right? So much easier to say this is what the commission is and have them agree, than to be like, this is what I'd like to see, and then have them say, okay, well, can you do any less? And then you're just having that awkward conversation, which happens, but try to have less. Yeah.
I realize sometimes, and it depends on each client, in past experiences, I call it, like, you can sometimes create a monster. And so depending on how you do your value proposition, and if someone prides themselves on, for instance, saving as much money as possible,
Yeah.
like that could be dangerous. Like that could be just
Yeah. It's true, because they're trying to cut corners in every way possible. So my goal is to show them that by paying me a 3% commission, you do get more money back, right? And that's one of the messages that, you brought up a certain company that is around here that is not as common again anymore in this market because it's harder to sell a home and you got to do it right. But yeah, it's all about bringing it.
It's gotta be home.
Yeah, maybe.
You barely see those signs anywhere anymore.
Yeah, and the truth is their market share even 3 years ago was less than 0.5%.
They used to be a ton, and now you see them randomly.
But their perception of what they were versus what they actually were there was a huge gap there,
I read a
which
whole
is
thing.
admirable in terms of a marketing perspective. But anyway,
You have them sign an agreement when you're meeting the buyer or seller on the first.
yeah, great question. Great question. So my approach with that is it depends. For a seller, yes, and during that consultation after we've had a chance to talk about it, that's when I'll have them sign that agreement. For a buyer, it depends. If it's somebody that I have no doubts is loyal to me, and is clearly working with me and I've been showing them homes, I usually don't bring the buyer's agreement up until the time that we write an offer. And at that point, I send it with them. I don't sneak it in, but I tell them what it is and why they're signing it, but I put it with the offer that they're signing. But sometimes if I feel like if it's somebody that I hadn't met before, I don't have a relationship with them already, they may or may not be working with other agents, and I do want to get that signed right away because I don't want to waste my time and I want them to be loyal to me and let's work together. And then when I get that back, it's like, hey, I can go full force with you. But Robert and then
Sorry.
Natalie.
Technically, I came here for that.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. No, yeah, this is Ignite. No, you're good.
One of the things you want to do, in my opinion, is I would suggest don't wait until the offer is done. You know, if you can, unless it's a previous client or something like that. But you want to make sure that you have an understanding. Because some people think that you're just helping them out of the goodness of your own heart. You know.
Okay, that's coming with the questions coming in that direction.
And so what happens is, you know, at the consultation, at the end of the consultation, we figured out who they are, what they're trying to achieve, what it's going to cost. Do they have the money to do that? You know, and then it gets down to the point where I usually say, so, you know, just to talk with you here, I feel very comfortable, you know, with you and what you're trying to achieve. I know, you know, I can make this happen for you, but I need to also make sure that you feel comfortable with me. So, do you feel comfortable with me representing you on this, you know, on this transaction here? And they say, oh yeah, sure, you know. So you say, let me tell you how that happens.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
The buyer broker agreement. This is how I put it in here. I'm sorry for getting off on buyers and talking about sellers here.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover.
But basically, I say, you know, legally, we have to have you sign a representation agreement. Now, this is in every state in the United States. And it came about 30 years ago when people didn't do this. And the question came up, well, who is representing who? And because in the United States, since we have this system where the seller is actually paying a commission instead of the buyer, then, you know, people were saying, well, wait a minute, you're now a sub-agent of the seller. You're not really representing the buyer or the buyer's best interest here. And so now they require that we define upfront who represents who. And so this is basically something that's not only an agreement, but it's also a loyalty agreement that says I represent you and only you, and you're going to work with me and only me.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that they, just like we talked about at the beginning, they feel the value, right? You're not just doing it so you're not just presenting it to them so that I can protect myself. No, this is protecting them too. What if they end up working kind of with two agents and then they buy a house with one and one says you owe me a commission and the other agent says you owe me a commission? Seller's agent's only going to pay one, or the seller's. So that means the buyer would have to pay. So it is protection for them as well. But
and that's what your sellers want. Hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here just for you.
Absolutely. But
And I've had somebody actually try to negotiate how much I pay, get paid, and stuff like that.
it may happen.
I actually have had two people in the, you know,
And you just got to be prepared ahead of time for how you're going to react to those kinds of things, because those do happen
And your sellers
sometimes.
do that too occasionally.
Yeah. But like I said, when I applied this spin selling method more, which is just again about building so much value, and there's specific ways how to do that. But building more value, I've gotten less pushback because by the time it comes to the commission, they feel like they're getting a deal because of all the value that we're providing. Yes.
I already found it.
Awesome. Yeah. It's a great, great method. It's kind of an older book, like 40 years ago, but it applies more today, I think, than it did back then, because today we're in an information age where people can get the information they need. What they need is somebody to help them evaluate and help them be their guide. Yeah.
That's why that it really is depending upon what the listing agent has renegotiated here. But I said, some of them, the listing agents aren't really that great at negotiating. And so they'll take the listing whenever they can, and they sometimes take it out of my side of the commission and only offering me anywhere from 500 to 1% of the commission here. I said, that doesn't work for me. If that were to happen, then we need to be able to go back in and ask the seller for more. Otherwise, we would have to come and look to you to do that.
Yeah.
But I said, don't worry about that. In 35 years I've been doing this business, I've never had the buyer pay that.
And again, Tim, in my opinion, I would rather not even bring that up because I don't want to create that friction with them to where they feel like I care more about the commission than them. And because it's only happened once or twice in my career, I don't even bring it up. So, but again, everybody's business model is different, and your approach should match what you feel most comfortable with. Okay, so we're gonna go through. We got 1 hour to go through kind of the rest of these, but okay, no worries. Good luck. So yeah, the A, qualified sellers, able, ready, and willing to do business in the next 14 days. Now, a few years ago, I went to, I had somebody on my, okay, so my parents live in Orem in a certain neighborhood. I'm on that Facebook group page, even though I no longer have lived there for like 15 years, but I'm on that Facebook group page. And somebody in that neighborhood who moved in right at about the time that I moved out, so I kind of knew of them, but I didn't really know them. They said that, hey, we're getting ready to sell our house by owner. Let me know if you know of anybody. So of course, as an agent, I'm like, okay, this is my chance. I'm gonna go knock on their door. And they live across the street from my parents and one house over. So like, there's that connection there. So I go, like, knock on the door, never talked to him before, and she knew who I was. And she knew that I was an agent. And I just said, hey, I just noticed that you're trying to sell your house coming up. Congratulations. Just wanted to see if I can come by and offer any guidance for you. So I wasn't trying to like tell her that, hey, I'm here to try and earn your business, but I mean, I was, and it was kind of obvious, but I was trying to do it in a nice way. Anyway, she invited me in. We had a great conversation. And she said, you know what? Well, we only had a conversation for like 5 minutes, but we scheduled a time for me to come back to talk to her and her husband a couple days later. And she said, you know what? Yeah, we had thought about doing it by owner, but we decided we don't want to. We do want to work with an agent. I have another agent coming on Thursday at this time. If you want to come right after, that'd be great. Which is always better to go right after. Actually, no, that's not true. It can be better. Sometimes they get you signed before you even have a chance to talk to them. Anyway, this is not how it worked this time. So I go the next time. It's kind of awkward because the other agent's coming out as I am at the doorstep and coming in. That's happened a handful of times. It's kind of weird, but whatever. I go in, and essentially she said that agent said, you guys aren't ready to list. I'm not going to work with you. And I was like, really? Like, I was shocked. I did not know that happened. They guess how long it took them to get ready to list by the time I left their house that day.
Probably weekend.
Okay, it was a little longer, but it's 30 days. So to me, it's not like 2 years down the road, right? It was only 30 days later that they were putting their house on the market. But this agent apparently never took a listing unless it was ready within a week or two. And I was like, all right, great. Well, I don't know anything about that agent. I should have looked up their name and seen their stats. Maybe they did better than me. I don't know, but they didn't get this one. So again, I'm in this more for the relationships and to help people at their timing, not mine. There are times where I have to help encourage them or help build natural urgency. For example, if rates do start getting lower, what's going to happen to the amount of buyers that go into the market? It's going to go up. How does that affect pricing? It's going to go up. How does that affect a buyer that doesn't have any money down, their ability to get into a house? It's going to be a lot harder because they're competing against other buyers who are financially in a better position that can win those homes. So anyway, there are things that the market does to help create this natural urgency, but you don't have to create that urgency for your clients. And so I always tell them, hey, I'll let you know what's going on in the market so that you can be ready whenever that timing is right for you. but I want you to know that I'm on your side and I'm ready when you are, not trying to put you on my timeline saying, hey, I gotta get paid by Friday, so let's hurry and make this happen, right? Like that's not how it works. So, but yeah, these A qualified sellers are people that are really close, and you want to make sure that you have a special designation for them in your database or something that you can see so that you know that you are reaching out to them at least once every 2 days, I think, with some sort of value, or checking in on them, or just, making sure that you're staying in contact with them every few days, because they can easily fall through the cracks. Some other agent could knock on their door. I would if they're saying that they're getting really close to being ready. And if they,
what do you say? Like, hey, just check.
so yeah, that's a good question. I try and break up a lot of stuff.
I have a listing appointment next Thursday.
Perfect. Awesome.
Like, it's been a panic. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, no, it's stressful.
I've been like waiting for my license, and she's calling me,
Okay.
and I'm like,
Yeah. So you've got your work to
like,
do
how much
till
do you
next
have
Friday.
for- Do you think it's gonna be worth this much? What about this? Should I do this? And I'm and okay, I know her and she's a friend and stuff, so I'm like, "You have a breath. It's gonna be fine." And I've actually talked to some agents here, and I said, "Hey, I have a listing that's coming up," and they're like, "How much is it gonna be? What does it look like? Is it new? Does it have this? Does it have that?" And her husband's like just on her, like, "Do you think it's sell? Are we gonna be all right?" Things like that. I'm like, take a breath, go to the doctor first.
Yes.
You have some other things you need to do, and then just breathe. So I'm like,
There's a
"Oh my
lot.
gosh."
Which, whenever somebody asks me a question like that on the phone, they expect us to know what their house is worth right in that moment. The truth is we don't, right? As much as we can give them a ballpark, but like there's so much there's research we have to do. There's CMA, right? And so the easiest way for me to answer those kinds of questions on the phone when they're asking is to say, look, I know this is very important to you. I would love to have a further in-depth conversation and really show you what the value is. Let's schedule a time, which you already have an appointment. And so you can say, I'll make sure to dive deep into that on Thursday to satisfy you.
I've got the folder. I've got we have one. There's only like one
comp
you could find. Yeah, just one comp.
Makes it tricky.
It barely came up. So
yeah, and I would go back in time a year, even 6 months or longer. That's okay.
She's out of town, so let's crush her fingers real hard between now and
you get it. But yeah, that's kind of Gary Vaynerchuk. You guys have heard of him? One of his, or no, actually, it wasn't even him. Anyway, it was another one that I can't remember his name. But they said one of their mantras is commit now, figure it out later. So somebody asks, can you do this, this, and this? And you've never done that before, rather than saying, I have no idea, because where are they going to go at that point? They're going to go find another agent that knows. But you also don't have to lie and say, I can do that for you right in this second. Buy yourself some time and say, yes, I'd love to do that for you. Let's have a conversation on Saturday. Yeah, and then you've got that much time to do your homework and figure it out, because you can figure those things out. But yeah. So the way that I do it, I have 2 ways. On command, you know how you can build separate tags for people? They call them tags, where you can attach certain things to them. One of them I have is I call them a timeline tag. I think command has a different way of doing it too, but this is the way that I've done it for a long time, so I like it. But anyway, I have 0 to 3 months, and it has a star on, so star 0-3 and then star. And that timeline to me says this person is ready to transact in the next 0 to 3 months. So when I'm doing my daily lead gen, what I'll do is I'll go to my command, I'll filter my tags just by 0 to 3 and say, okay, and go down that list of people that are ready in the next 0 to 3 months, and make sure that I have some sort of valuable contact within, again, every 2 to 3 days. Yeah, and it's about me giving them. So instead of having this one long conversation on the phone about all these different things I'm going to do for them, I'll usually just pick one. That way, in 2 or 3 days, I can call them and give them another. And then 2 or 3 days, I can call them and give them another. Because that way, I'm breaking it up over time, but still adding value every single time I talk to them.
Okay, cool.
So, like, it depends on what situation. Like, are you thinking about selling your house and
so I have my sister-in-law called me, same thing, and said, hey, would you like to sell our house in Ephraim. Okay, I
Awesome.
said I'd love to, and they haven't lived here in 5 years. They live in Texas,
Okay.
and I haven't heard back from her for a minute. I mean, she
Yeah,
has
yeah.
1,000 things on her plate. I get
Right.
that, but call me and tell me. So
So have we had our consultation yet?
she's in Texas. They're trying to find the information
Virtual.
crap they need. So
So my goal, and I guess this is good.
so
I'm
call
glad
me
that you're
one
bringing
more
this.
too. Like that's what I'm like.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the nag, but I
Right.
do want to do this. Like
Yeah.
I do.
One phrase that I've used a lot is to make sure I'm on the ball for you, or to make sure I'm not dropping the ball for you.
Because I contacted her a couple times and said, hey, there's this. They still have, are you under this amount of acreage? Yes, you're under, 5 only, so that you're not,
Yeah.
just ag. And gave her that bit of information after one of the classes. That was last week. So
Okay.
I want to give her some information this week.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm keeping my points and I'm
Gotcha.
keeping contact with her.
So one of those things is one of the things that we'll talk about here, which is the
Okay, I'm
seller's
ahead,
consult.
sorry.
No, you're totally fine. I'm glad you brought it up to make sure that we hit it. Is the seller's consultation, right? That's like, to me, the make it or break it point for you as an agent with the seller. That's when they're deciding, are they going to work with you or not? Now, sometimes you may have a family member or a close friend that decides that they're going to work with you before they even have a chance to talk to you. One misconception out there is that because I've got this family member that already knows me, I can go show up to their house in shorts and a t-shirt, right? No, I think you have to step up your game even more. Why?
Because they can choose somebody else.
They can. And what happens if they do when Thanksgiving comes around?
Okay, well, I'm gonna give you an example. I've done hair
Yeah.
for 22 years. I live by my family, a bunch of them. Do you want to know how many family members' hair I do?
How
I
many?
do my sister
Mm.
and her children and my mother.
Mm.
That's it.
That's it.
But in
And why is that?
business, because I've been busy. I'm very busy,
Gotcha.
and I've never one time advertised, and all of my business has been on referrals.
Yeah.
Literally. And you have to grow some really thick skin in
Yes.
business. And if you
That's a good
don't have
way
thick
to put it.
skin, then you should not be in any sort of business where you are your own boss.
Yeah.
Because business and family are 2 different things.
Yeah.
And that is the honest to goodness truth, because your family and friends may not use you because they have someone who's been in the business longer than you, and they don't want to mix family.
And it can get
business.
awkward. And there are people like that. I
It
like
happens.
to work with family. I prefer to work with family and friends, but you have to do an even better job for them. You have to show up more for them, because word travels fast
Mhm.
in a small circle like that. And if I don't do a good job for them, everyone's going to know about it, and then my business is going to tank, right? Or at least I have to change my approach. And there have been a handful of situations, family situations, that were very heated, that Dean could tell you about, that I've dealt with personally. And those relationships are definitely damaged and have not been the same.
Right.
But I've had way more that I feel way closer to, because the truth is, this is a job where you get to know people on a really deep level. And oftentimes they'll tell you about their financial situation. They'll tell you about their struggles. They'll tell you about, I mean, if you're really getting into it, why are you even selling? Oh, it's because I want my kids to go to this other school. Why does that matter to you? You're having these deep conversations with people. And so you have that opportunity to connect with them really well. That's why I love working with friends and family, because I get to do that more often. Now that comes at a cost, where occasionally something will happen that now my relationship is even worse with this person. But
And some
I'm
people
willing
may
to
not want you
make
they
that.
don't want you to know all the personal
Yeah,
information,
that may
so
be
they
the
may choose
reason.
it
It's true.
specifically for that.
Yep. But you do have to thick skin. I had a cousin once, I simply invited them to this is a weird situation, but I had a first-time homebuyer seminar that I was doing. So I was letting all my friends and family know that I know don't own homes, and said, hey, I'm having this first-time homebuyer seminar. I'd love to see you guys there if you feel like it'd be valuable for you. And she texted back and was basically like, I will never support you or any of your businesses. I don't work with family. And then about 2 years later, her mom got her real estate license, and this cousin of mine sold her home, not with me and not with her mom, but with some other agent. So yeah, she was hardcore about it, right? So I'm like, wow, okay, that's one way to do it. But that's one out of how many cousins I have, so that's kind of how I approach it, is that yes, it comes at a cost, but I'm not going to let that minority control my whole decisions on how I'm going to go about my business. Because again, I've had 3 of my siblings that I'm proud of, that I'm really close to, because they've all three of them have bought a home and now have moved to a second home, kept that first one as a rental. And like, they're on their way to a wealth building journey. And I'm not saying I'm the reason, but I definitely was a part of it with them, right? And I got to be there with them doing that. And so it's really cool now to be, to be that with them. So that's my approach on family and friends, but definitely don't take it lightly. Show up more for them, do your extra homework, wear your nicer shoes, all that kind of stuff. But don't get your feelings hurt because it's going to happen. Be ready for it. Someone's going to do that. Your next door neighbor that you thought you were so close with for 6 years is going to, and that's come to all your events and that's done all this stuff, is going to randomly go with someone else. And you're like, they didn't even tell me, So that stuff happens, but hopefully we can avoid it more often than not. The truth is, how many transactions do you actually need to make a living? You can afford to lose a couple, right? Now, obviously we want as many as we can, but if those things happen, which they will, just know that's part of the business. But okay, I want to get to your question because you want to add different parts of value. And to me, the only way to do that is to figure out, well, what value am I adding as an agent to people? What are the things that I do that are valuable to them, and maybe make a list of those things. And then you can kind of break those things up into different conversations. But my main goal when I meet somebody, that, whether it's for buying or selling, that says I'm thinking about buying or thinking about selling, my main goal at that point is absolutely not to sell their house or to help them buy a house. My main thing that I'm trying to sell is, let's have an appointment. Let's have a conversation. And just like with anything else, if I just go up to somebody and say, hey, let's have an hour conversation about potentially helping you buy or sell a house, like, that's not enough reason for them to agree. There has to be a reason that they're interested in doing that. And so it could be most of the time I just use something as simple as, I'd love to give you more details about today's market because it's very different from markets that we've seen in the past. Is there a time that I could come over and we can go more thoroughly on what your home value is and what approach you'd like to take to selling your house? So something like that, to just say, let's have an hour conversation because it's going to be valuable for you, right? I'm trying to get the appointment. Once you get the appointment, then your goal at that point changes. But my first goal with anybody I talk to that's thinking about buying or selling is not to help them buy or sell. It's to get an appointment. That's what I'm trying to do first. That has to be my target. So anytime I'm randomly calling people as part of my lead gen, my goal is to find an appointment, not to find a buyer or seller, to find an appointment. And the more I've shifted my focus to that, the more success that I've had. So let's see. All right, we skipped ahead here. 3 L's of the MREA. See, I wasn't lying to you. Leads, listings, and leverage. Okay, virtues of seller listings. Let's talk about some of these things. Seller listings mean marketing opportunities. We've talked about that. You have more control of your time. So, because also when a buyer wants to see a house, oftentimes when is that? Okay, yeah, but most of the time they're working, right? So like it's going to be evenings and weekends. That's pretty common. For a seller listing appointment, I mean, maybe it's an evening, but a lot of times you can do that sometime during the week. Seller listings maximize your per hour compensation, and that's simply because in general, you spend a lot less time with sellers than you do with buyers. Volume, volume, volume. It's so much easier to have 10 sellers at a time than it is to have 10 active buyers at a time. Why? Your time is limited, right? And if one client wants to go see homes in South Utah County, the other one the same day wants to go see homes in North Utah County, how do you split yourself up, right? So those are the times when I use the opportunities in WhatsApp. Are you guys all on that tab? Yep. Can you show homes for me? I would say that those have happened also a little bit less lately because there's less people out there buying. But in general, those opportunities come quite often. And so you can help get your experience, get your feet wet, and get a little bit of money on the side as newer agents doing that. With seller listings, you're on the front end of pricing. So we talked about that already. You get to kind of help determine that pricing. And then properly marketed seller listings bring you more business. That's the key, properly marketed. But
That's the other question. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I
There
love it.
is a house in my neighborhood. I live in a really expensive neighborhood. I'm a poor person. I have a small house. $30 million house in my neighborhood.
Dang.
We have one of the doTERRA,
Oh yeah, founders or something.
Yeah.
C-suite
his house is
level.
way out of control. I live up on the Ghost Temple. So
Okay, yeah.
there's, just to give you,
Yeah.
there you go, prospect there. There's a house that's been for sale in my neighborhood for 1.5. I think it's down to.
Okay. Yeah.
It's been there since March.
Mm-hmm.
She's one of my clients too, and my friends, and I asked her the other day, and I said, and one of the neighbors listed it, I said, so, house listed.
Yeah.
Till December,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, how's it going?
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen it, I've looked at the pictures and everything of her, and it's all brown, nothing's updated, it doesn't have anything that's special.
Yes.
That's like really cool finish work, nothing's really neat.
Okay.
It's almost a 20-year-old house and nothing's been updated.
Yeah, that's tough.
And I keep thinking, it
Why?
didn't sell before COVID for $800,000,
Oh wow. Dang.
and then they doubled the price almost.
Yeah, that's a lot.
after COVID. So
So what's happened?
what's going on?
So I'll tell you.
Why is that the price they chose? Is what I want to know. Why?
That's a great question. And that matters a lot. If there's anything that you guys take away from this class today, it's going to be this following thing that I'm going to say. In order to sell a house, you need 3 things done very well. Number 1 is marketing. That's what we do as agents more than anything else, is we hit the masses. If you list your home on one website, great. You've listed on one website, you'll catch attention of a bunch of buyers there. But what do we do as agents? Where do we list our homes? Which then syndicates it to where? Every single website you can think of that has homes for sale in Utah, except for classifieds like KSL or Facebook. Those you'd have to do separately, which I recommend doing. But generally speaking, and this is what I tell, this is kind of the commitment that I make to my sellers, is when I list your property, you will not be able to search for your home anywhere online and not find it. Like, it'll be there. Any website that sells homes, even if it's samacunia.com. Actually, it's probably kw.samacunia.com, right? Every agent has their own websites. It's going to be there. Your home will be on every single brokerage website, homey.com. It's going to be there, right? That's one of the biggest power tools that we have as agents, is that we hit to the masses. In order to sell your home for the most money possible, you can only find one buyer, but your pool of reach has to be as big as possible, because the chances of you getting the highest bidder increase as you increase your buyer pool. And so if you increase where you're listing it, you increase what your potential is going to be. So number 1 is marketing, but it's not only on websites. There's other ways that you can market your properties. Any ideas? Open houses. That's a great one. And with open houses, I like to do flyers at least the day before, sometimes the 2 days before, to the neighborhood.
See, I did not get
There's 2 reasons why.
nothing in our neighborhood.
Yeah, you didn't get any flyers for that. There's 2 reasons why I like to do that. And this is a conversation I now have during my listing consultation with the seller. I talk about these 3 things, by the way. I say, these are the 3 things that you need in order to have a successful listing. Number 1 is marketing, and then I dive into marketing. Number 2 and number 3 we'll talk about in a second. But when we're talking about marketing, I say these are some of the things. And I have slides that I show them. In fact, I print them out now and give it to them, a little booklet that we're going through during my listing presentation. But I show them, this is what we do for open houses. This is why open houses matter. And I tell them there's really 2 reasons that why I like to do open houses. One 100% benefits you, but one just benefits me. And here's why. And I tell them, because I like to be upfront. I tell them the reason it benefits you is because if any of your neighbors, this is their chance of having a family or friend come live by them. If they love their neighborhood, chances are they know someone else that might want to live there. So although it's not super often, it's about 5% of the time that happens, if not less, but it still happens. So I want to make sure that we don't take any shortcuts, and we want to do the full thing for you. So if we can find the highest potential buyer from that method, I want to make sure we hit that. And I'm going to back up just a second. I'm kind of going in a couple different directions here, but in my listing packet, one of the slides that I have and I got this data from the NAR, the National Association of Realtors. Every year they send out a giant report of all sorts of different information. And one of those is a question that I love presenting to my sellers is, where did buyers in 2022, so last year, ultimately find the home that they bought? What method did they use? Now, you guys can easily answer. The majority of them found it where? What's that? Yeah, or online. Yep, that's kind of one big category. But yeah, online. Like 80% of them found online. That's no surprise. And then some of them found it from any other methods you guys can think of? Okay. Yes. Yes, I would say social media could classify as online, but it also could classify as word of mouth, right? That's usually how that happens. Word of mouth. Do we use newspapers anymore? Not really. Used to be a lot, right? Open house signs, the yard sign, another one, or I guess open houses and then the yard sign. It's two separate ones. Word of mouth, and then online, and then through their agent, which ultimately gets it online. But these are all the different methods that people find homes that they buy. And so what I present to my sellers is, this is where my marketing plan comes from. In order to market your home, I'm going to make sure to hit every single one of these. Because I asked them this question: can you guarantee me right now from which segment of these is your highest potential buyer going to come from? Guaranteed. Do you guys know? Do we know? Could be. When do we know for sure? Yeah, after it's done, right? Once we sell the house, then we find out, oh, you came from word of mouth or you came from online. But we don't know that for sure until after. And the reason I tell them this is because I know that in my process, I do all of these steps. I make sure that I hit word of mouth. I make sure that I hit online. I make sure that I do open houses, because there is a chance that their highest potential buyer could come from any one of those. If we only market online, we'll never know what we could have had by marketing to word of mouth or doing an open house. Or if we only do an open house, we'll never know what we could have had by doing word of mouth. But the bigger the pool that I'm looking in, the more likely I am to find that highest potential buyer. So that's how I present my marketing plan to them. And then I go in depth on each of those items to tell them, this is what I do for online, right? You want to make sure you have high quality photos. I talk about that their website will be on, or that their home will be listed on every single website they can think of and more. It'll be impossible for them to look for their home and not find it online. That covers the online. And then the photography, I make sure that their photography stands out. We talk in depth about what that means. Why does it stand out? I show them some bad examples, which is really fun, because I show them these bad pictures that I found on the MLS. It took me a while to find them, but once in a while you'll find some bad pictures. And I ask them, what's wrong with these photos? And they'll tell me. And I specifically chose different kinds. That one's too dark. This one, the house is a mess. This one, it's too cluttery, right? Yeah. There was one that had the couch in the middle of the living room for no reason. And it just was weird, right? There was one that showed a picture of the front of the house, but it cut off half the house. And so like, these are easy examples to show them, and it's really fun for them to engage and be like, yeah, that one's bad because of this. That one's bad because of this. Like, it gets them involved. Yeah, totally. And then of course I flip the slide, the next screen, what does that show? Yeah, shows the photos that I've had on my listings that are great, right? Oh, that one's really bright. What do you like about these? That home is so clean, you know, those different things. And I purposely selected a couple of photos from older houses that also looked really, really good, to show them that, hey, even if your house is old, that doesn't matter. We can still make it look really, really good if we do proper staging and photography. So as part of my marketing explanation online, those are the things that we do. I also talk about pricing a little bit here, because pricing matters in the sense that you're also kind of weeding out certain buyers, or whether it's on purpose or not. So in other words, when you're looking on a home online, it asks you certain criteria. What kind of home are you looking for, right? What are the criteria, the main criteria it asks for? How many bedrooms? How many square feet is the house? Year it was built, right? The most basic ones are location and price, right? So if I'm a buyer and I'm saying, oh, I'm going to go up to 500,000, what homes am I cutting off from my search? Everything over. So if my home is listed for 501,000, I don't get that buyer. Could that buyer afford a 501 versus 500? 9 times out of 10, yeah. So what I don't want to do is cut those people out of my search. So in other words, I don't want to list at 501. If I'm really close to a increment of $25,000, I will go to that increment, right? If I think this home could sell for 530, I will have this conversation with the seller and we'll list at 525, hopefully, if they're okay with that. Because what happens is the list price, and this is something that you need to understand as agents, as well as to explain to your sellers, the list price is not the sold price. Those are two different numbers for a reason. Not very often does a home actually sell for exactly that price. There's some sort of concessions that are involved or a price increase or decrease of some kind. So this is an advertised price. This is a starting price. This is a price to get us to the market, a marketing price, right? You can call it whatever you want, but this is not your sold price. So this is a tool that we can use to help generate more interest in your home. Now, what are the problems if you list it way too low? Let's say your home is roughly around 500,000. What happens if we list it for 400,000? Immediately, what's a buyer's response?
It's not a value.
Why? Something must be wrong with it, right? So is that the perception we want buyers to feel? Of course not, right? Because then what happens to the offers? Maybe we'll get 410, right? It's above asking. Wouldn't that be great? No, that doesn't matter. We're going to get offers for way less than what we could want. So it's easy for them to see that you're going to lose a lot of money if we list way too low. Now, what happens if we list it way too high? If we list it for 600,000. This might be what happens to your friend.
People are like, "Oh, it's nice, it's great,"
But what are those buyers that are looking at this home for 600,000 comparing that to? Other homes that are listed for 600,000. So they're seeing those homes, whether online or in person, they're seeing these other homes for 600,000 and then they see yours. And it's clearly way less. Yeah, they think about all the things they have to repair, update. So in their minds, that home is good. So then what's going to happen? It's going to sit on the market. The number one price killer, again, something you as agents need to understand as well as to convey to your sellers. The number one price killer, any guesses? What's that? Okay. That could help, that could influence this, which results in the home sitting on the market for too long. So DOM, days on market.
Their house was for 200 days when I was looking
Yeah.
at the Keller Williams house.
And before you even look at the pictures, what do you know about that house? Or what do you perceive, I should say?
No, there's something wrong with it.
Something wrong with the house. There's a reason somebody hasn't bought it for this
It was
price,
beautiful. I loved
listed
that.
way too much. And it could be.
Way too much.
So I'll have a personal example. I'm not proud of this, but it's a good learning experience. You guys are gonna have plenty of those. I just had my very first withdrawn listing from a seller that had their home on the market for 4 months and finally took it off. First time I've ever had that. It's very sad. Just like 3 weeks ago. Yeah, it wasn't too long, but for her, it was too long, right? And there's no hard feelings, but in retrospect, here's what happened. It was the price. We had listed it for too high. And have you guys heard the term chasing the market? I don't know if I have a whiteboard, but in a down market, prices go down. Well, that's obvious, right? Prices go down. I should go this way for you guys. Prices go down over time. And if your price is here today, in 2 months in a down market, where's that price going to be? Down here. Well, if you list for too high here, when you have a price correction a month later, you may seem like you're reducing the price by quite a bit, but where's the price at that point? It's down here. So you're just chasing the market. You're getting behind. So you may continually lower that price, but because the market's ahead of you going down, you're behind it, you're going to continue it. So in other words, if you had listed for here from the start, you would have sold for higher than what you would have sold if you listed it from here and chased the market down. That concept is exactly what happened to this house because there was a home that sold that was identical to the one that I was trying to sell that did not have a finished basement. Ours did. And we listed it at that price, $575. or sorry, I shouldn't say we listed it. That's the price I recommended. What she wanted was 610, but I convinced her to go at least down to 600, which was still too high. And I knew that, but despite my best efforts, I couldn't convince her to go any lower than that. So we went at 600. Well, it sat on the market, sat on the market, sat on the market. Finally, she decided to lower the price to 590 was the lowest she'd be willing to go. And it just couldn't do it. It was, by then, we couldn't even get 575. We finally convinced, she was able to go another reduction and finally went to the price I had originally said, which was 575. But by then, it was already probably, she maybe could have sold for 550 at that point. Because two things. Number one, the market was going down. Number two, our days on market was up, which means, like, think about it. If you're a buyer and you're an expert negotiator, if you see a home that's been on the market for 2 days, you go to the open house, there's 5 other people there. What do you have to do to that offer in order to get it accepted? Yeah, at least listing price, but probably higher. If you go to a home that's been on the market for 45 days and you go and there's nobody else there, maybe you even ask the agent, hey, do you have any offers? And they said, no, we haven't even had showings for 2 weeks, right? They shouldn't say that, but if they do, that's good for you as a buyer's agent. Then what happens to your offer? You go way lower, right?
And they're not gonna accept it anyway.
And they may not. Sometimes they do, right? But that's the point, is if the home has been on the market for longer, your price will go down. That's how it works. That's how this game works. So our goal as agents is to sell the home as quickly as possible because that gives them the highest price, right? I've had somebody say, well, what if I just listed my home for this price and then, if we can't get that, then we'll lower it. Well, this is what happens, because by then you've been on the market. And anytime you add days on market, your price goes down significantly. So there's data that you can pull to show them if they don't believe you, but this is how it works. So going back to my 3 things that you need in order to successfully sell a house. Number 1 was what? Marketing. And in this marketing conversation, I have a little bit of a conversation about price, because that can be seen as part of marketing. But number 2 is price, and all in and of its own. And we kind of just recapped the whole reason for that. This listing that I just lost happened because we had the other 2 things right, which I haven't told you the third one yet, but we did not do the pricing right. And because we didn't do the pricing right, we did not sell the house. Right.
People think it's still, back
Some people do.
years
And
ago here,
yeah.
we were just like,
that's why you've got to show them statistics. You've got to bring to your listing presentation some sort of statistics to show the market today is different than any market you've been in the past. Even if they've bought multiple homes, oftentimes the market today is different than any market they've been in before. Or maybe it's similar to one they've been in before, but it's like 3 years ago or 5 years ago, and then they can relate to it. But if they didn't buy or sell at that time, they probably didn't really notice. But go ahead.
Brutally honest
Mm-hmm.
about maybe the aesthetics of the home.
Yep.
Saying that they've got to make some adjustments, changes.
Yes,
In dust and new paint, new carpet, new.
absolutely.
whatever. Sometimes I can see that might be a little difficult.
Yeah, it can be a hard conversation, especially when that was their favorite color and they painted it on their own.
Price factor and
Yep.
sellability. How quickly do you want this to move?
Exactly. So that's the conversation. The easiest, there's 2 things I can say to that. Number 1 is you want to help convey the message that you want to appeal to the masses. And anytime you get more custom in our price range, maybe if you're in a super luxury, that might be better. But anytime you get more custom within the house world, what does that do to the amount of people you're attracting? It limits it. And what happens when you limit the people that you're attracting to your price? Your price goes down. So we want to appeal to as many people as possible, whatever the majority wants. So yes, I think this is a beautiful color too. I really like it. I'd love to have this in my home, if that's true. You don't want to lie, but compliment them and say it's a really unique style. I love that. But when we come to sell a home, it's going to look a little different. One of the ways that I tell people to help ease that pain a little bit is the way that we live in homes and the way that we sell homes to set, the way that we market homes to sell always look different, and they need to, especially when you have kids or pets. That has to look different, because we want to appeal to the masses. What people want is to walk through what looks like a model home. And that's what we're going to try and do for your home the best we can, is to make it look as much like a model home as possible, because that's what people want. Do people live in homes exactly like a model home that comes straight out of a magazine? Hardly ever, right? Most of us don't, because it's not fun to upkeep your house like that, again, especially if you have kids or pets. But that's what we want to try to do when we're staging your home for sale. So it's going to look different, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean that you're living wrong, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's one way to handle it. Another way to handle it is I use a staging company called Aloe and Elm. There's many out there. They're my favorite. Aloe and Elm. Kelsey's the girl that owns it. And I kind of, a lot of times I'll have her have that conversation with them instead of me. And she's a professional designer and stager. Like, that's what she does for a living. I'm a real estate agent, so some people see me as that too. But a lot of times it's easier just to have her do it. And so if they're a client that's willing to do staging from a professional staging company, then I'll have her do that. And for her, they do two different ways. If the home is vacant, they can come in and stage the home with all of their furniture, which is great. I would never want to sell a vacant home that's empty, ever, if I can avoid it. In fact, I can avoid it because I have, in certain situations, paid for the whole listing, the whole staging fee myself, because I would just rather sell it. Because again, it goes back to that thing. If I don't sell this on time, that also means I may not sell it at all. 100%. Yep. The staged homes sell for staged homes sell 73% faster than non-staged homes, and for up to 10% more. So if your home is $500,000 and you stage it and it costs you $2,000 to stage it for a month, you could potentially be getting $25,000, maybe more.
How much sell for?
The stat that they share on their website is up to 10% more.
What's that website?
I don't know the URL, but it's Aloe and Elm, ALOE, and Elm, ELM.
Yes, I went to several open houses on Saturday just to get a feel, and I went in a couple vacant homes.
Mhm.
And they were old.
Yeah.
They stunk.
Yep.
I mean, it was bad.
Yeah.
And the real estate agent said, well, we just had the owner put a new carpet downstairs at a vacant. My son and I went through and literally grabbed our nose.
Oof. There you go. Smells are very important. Man, I think we're okay on time. I'm not going to the slides as much, but I hope this has been helpful for you guys.
It's great.
One of the things that I do, and again, this is up to you guys on how you want to build your business, how you want to pay for it. You guys know Pura, those diffusers that are smart diffusers. They plug into the wall and they have a scent going around. Really good. Those are a little more pricey. I found another one that's all natural and it's way cheaper for me. So I've been doing those ones instead. It's called Scent Fill, SCENT, Scent Fill. Those are just little plugins. Plus, if they don't have Wi-Fi, the Pura ones don't work. So if I'm doing a vacant home, it wouldn't work. These ones just plug into the wall, so they just go. As part of my value that I add to my clients is that I include those for free. I give them 4, well, depending on the size of the house, usually about 4 devices. And the way that I explain it is when I'm showing homes to buyers, we're sitting on the front porch, and sometimes the hardest part of my job is getting that door open. Sometimes the key gets stuck. Sometimes I can't get the key out of the lockbox. So what are the buyers doing? And again, I'm going into my presentation mode here with you to engage my sellers in this conversation. What are my buyers doing as I'm standing there on my front porch, or on the front porch trying to get that door open? Looking at what? Yeah, looking at the front of the house. How often do you as a seller look at the front of your house and take a look around for more than 2 seconds? Most people probably hardly ever, right? And that's usually the answer they'll give you. And what are they looking at specifically? They're looking at the cobwebs. They're looking at the dust and whatever's not clean in that front. So first impressions are huge. And while they have a couple of seconds there, that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the showing. If they see old and dirty and yucky, the inside, no matter what you have on the inside, that feeling's not going to go away. And so one thing that I do is either let them borrow or I go and do it myself, or I hire somebody to do it, is to power wash their front porch to make sure that there's no cobwebs or anything on there. First impressions. The second thing that I do is according to smells. There have been so many times where you've opened that door and you get a whiff of something. You always get every home has a smell. But the problem is, if it's not a really good smell, it's a bad smell. And again, it sets the tone for the rest of the showing that, this is yucky. Oh, that's gross. I don't like that. And what happens when buyers feel that way about your house? Like, always go back to the price. This results in a lower price for you. So what I do is I'll include these devices. I put one to the outlet that's closest to the front door as possible. One, if you have stairs, as close, like any entrance points in the house. So the front of the house, entrance to the master bedroom, entrance to the kitchen or to the living room, like, or if you go up the stairs and like as soon as you get to that stairs, I put these devices throughout the house in those areas to make sure that whenever they're getting to a new area of the house, they get that refreshing, that's nice, you know? That's what I want them to feel, not, did they cook fish or, you know? Yeah, I highly recommend it. So those are the two things that I do to help with that. If it has a bad smell, you've got to get that taken care of, because a bad smell, even if it's a simple bad smell, you're going to lose thousands of dollars for a bad smell that most of the time can be remediated pretty easily. Sometimes it may take more work, but if it takes more work, I mean, it's worth it. You're going to lose more money on that house for a really bad smell than it would cost you to get it fixed up. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And she said, I never use candles or anything. Because I don't want people feeling like I am covering up something. She goes,
Okay.
anytime I smell it, in a sense somehow,
Yeah.
I feel like
So that is interesting. I would say that if it's not too strong, because obviously I've had times where I've put those diffuser boxes and I've gone back into that house a couple days later and I'm like, whew, that's too much, you know? Because if it's that obvious, then you may feel that. But yeah, just something light enough that's like, you know, yeah, it just feels a little bit fresh to me. And this, as a side note, this is what I love about Ignite classes, is that there are differences of opinions, because the truth is there's not one way to, I hate the term skin a cat, but right. That's why you take whatever I say that resonates with you and imply that, but then apply with somebody else something, little bits and pieces. Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you can sell mold or if you can smell pet. The funniest example I had this lady that had 4 dogs in her house. To me, it was disgusting. Like hair everywhere. You walk in the house, you could smell that some of them may not have been potty trained recently. I don't know. But it was bad. I'm showing this lady, who is an ex-aunt of mine. Anyway, I'm showing her homes to buy. I go into this one home. They had a dog there. What am I thinking that she's feeling? I didn't think she would care. Her house was way worse. And the first thing she said was, oh, I think they've had dogs here. I'm like, what? You know, because it's not her dog, right? And so the point of that is, that was very vivid for me to realize, if your sellers have pets, best case scenario, the pets don't exist in that house during the time you're showing. They're at another house, the smell's gone, the pet bowl is gone, the kennel is gone, all of that's gone. But I have to be sensitive, because to some people, pets are more than pets, right? They're family, and they're not going to kick out a family member just to show a house. So if that's the case, we still want to do what we can to, you know, to not make it so obvious or make it appear as if, like, I don't know, that the dog or the cat or whatever only was allowed in this certain area of the house. So like, you're not going to have a pet bowl in your bedroom or something like that, right? That, like, those are kinds of things that you want to try and help with the pets. But get a feel for how they're feeling about it, because yeah, I don't want to tell somebody they got to kick out a family member if that's how they feel about their pets, right? Any questions about pets? That can be a sensitive one a little bit. Okay. All right, what else? So, okay, we talked about first impressions. We talked about the pets, the smells, how smells are very important. So thank you for bringing that up. All right, so let's recap those three items. We have you have to do really well in order to sell a house. And I personally believe that you can take any home that did not sell and specify at least one of these three things that did not do very well. So the first one was what? Marketing. Second one was price. And the third one we've kind of touched on here and there. I classified as staging or what's the word? Slipped my mind. Condition. There we go. Staging and condition is kind of one other one. It could be that you have the right price. It could be that you did really well on marketing, but the home was not in order. One example, and I like to use examples to my clients because it helps them remember things well. I told them, and this is a true story, I helped a friend of mine buy a townhome a few years back, and I always tell my buyers the exact opposite of what I tell my sellers when it comes to the listing photos online. If you're a seller, I want you to have the best photos on the market. I want you to have the best lighting, the best angles, all that stuff. If you're a buyer, what happens to most buyers when they see 9 homes that are beautiful pictures, everything's great, and then they see one with dark photos? What do they do with that one? They don't like it, so they ignore it. Could it be that that home was perfect for them and that that home was actually amazing? Yes, but the pictures were crappy compared to all these other ones they're seeing online. And because we're such a, fast-paced generation, we want to see the better ones. And so if they only have time to go see 5 of those homes, yours is going to be scrapped off the list in most buyers' eyes. But when I'm talking to a buyer, I have this conversation but backwards, and I say, most buyers feel that way, which means less competition for you. We can usually get a bit better deal on those. So pay extra special attention to any listing that has cluttery photo, like cluttery rooms, dirty rooms, dark photos, bad angles. Pay special attention to that. It may be that those could be the ones that you get a better deal on and that work great for you. I had that conversation with one of my friends, and it turns out that there was one like that. There was literally in the listing photo, clothes all over the bedroom, including like a bra on the bed, just sprawled out. Like that's what the listing photo was. When we walked through the house the next day for the showing, it was the same. Like there was kids' underwear in the living room. Like I'm not joking. Like this house, the dirty dishes piled high. They just, it was not show ready. Once in a while, you're going to run into homes like that. But my buyers had the right perspective, and they looked past the yuckiness, and they saw, okay, if we painted this wall, if we changed this carpet, man, this home could be great. Long story short, we ended up getting that home for $15,000 less than the previous sold townhome of the exact same model in that neighborhood. $15,000. They spent about $4,000 to do their little upgrades of paint and carpet. Brand new home. I mean, it was amazing. So all in all, they got that home for $11,000 off simply because they looked past it. As a seller, we definitely don't want you to be that story, right? You lose money. Selling homes is really unique, and this is something I'll tell them at the beginning. You can't just sell your home one way and then go sell your home another way and say, you know what, I like that way better, I'm going to go with that one. You've got one shot. You have one chance to do this right. So my approach is to not skip any steps, to go from A to Z with you no matter what market we're in, to make sure that we get the highest potential buyer at the best price for you in the shortest amount of time. Okay. All right, let's go through the last few. We've got 10 minutes. You guys okay on time? All right. Most of this I'm going to skip over because we've kind of already talked about it, but seller service cycle. So number 1, you have a lead conversion. You're converting them to what? A sale? Appointment. Number 1, have a conversation with them, get an appointment. Number 2, you have this pre-listing stuff. And again, this goes back to your checklist. What are the things that you're going to do for your sellers, and in what order? On the Trello thing, the reason I like it so much is because I have this checklist that I just copy and paste. But then when I have a seller and I have the projected list date, like the day that they're hoping to go to the market on, and according to that date, certain tasks will generate a reminder for me to do like 4 days before or 2 days before, right? That's part of my pre-listing checklist. You want to do a CMA. Always, 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 you want to bring a CMA to the listing appointment. People are very interested in what's sold recently. And rather than telling them what they're going to sell their house for, I think the best approach is to help them decide on what price to sell for. You're just a guide to help them figure out where they want to list. And you do that by this conversation I had about pricing. What's the problem if we list way too high? What's the problem if we list way too low? What happens if we list at 501 as opposed to 500? Who are we missing out on? Kind of have those conversations about price. And then when you're actually talking about the market, the homes that have sold recently, you want to try and have 3 or 4 comps. I know you said it's hard. It can be harder to find.
Right. She already told me how much she wants this for, like right off.
Yeah.
I found this on Zillow and this is what I want.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, super. Funny thing, something different. I was like, on Zillow, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And Zillow uses this algorithm that may or may not be accurate. You just can't trust it. Sometimes it's spot on, sometimes it's not. Okay.
Probably should be able to list what she wants me and I look at it.
Yeah.
Should be okay.
In my experience, there have been, let me put it this way, I have never regretted listing a home for the lower price we were thinking about. Does that make sense? I have regretted for listing a little higher than what we thought, right? So I highly recommend that when you're having these conversations, to try to convince them and help persuade them to believe that it is in their best interest to list a little bit lower than what the market value is. Because again, this is not the sold price that you're talking about. This is a marketing price. This is a way to attract potentially more interest. And whenever you attract more interest, you have your chances of selling it for higher goes up. So you're not guaranteeing that you're going to sell higher. But what usually how I phrase it is, if there's somebody out there, or if the market is in a position to offer you a higher price, we will find that. We will get that, even if we list at a little bit lower. Again, if we list way too low, that creates that other effect about how you have this bad perception. But if you're just kind of right in the ballpark, but kind of on the lower end, that's usually the sweet spot that you want to get to. Okay, then servicing and marketing. We talk about how to keep your clients. I have a spreadsheet that I have that helps me keep track of who's visiting the house, when the showings are happening, and the feedback from those visitors, right? So I try to, most agents, if you call them or text them, will give you some sort of feedback. Once in a while, you won't hear back from somebody. But as much as we can help it, I like to give the sellers feedback. And that helps for 2 reasons. Kind of to Scarlett's point earlier, let's say that your sellers decided against your advice and said, no, we're going to leave this moldy green color in our kitchen because we think that's the best, right? It's my favorite color. We're going to leave it. What getting feedback allows you to do is to not be the voice of those kinds of conversations, where if multiple buyers are saying, I don't like that color, well, maybe we take it off the market for 3 days, paint that, and then put it back on, see what happens, right? They get to be the voice. And I'll tell my sellers, I'll ask them this question. I get their permission to be honest with them. And not everyone's going to tell you yes, but I ask them, would you like me to filter anything that they say, or would you like me to put it on there exactly how they said it? Right? They're going to tell you that they want that, but that way I'm getting their permission to make sure that, hey, even if this is not a happy thought, I'm going to put it on there because that's what they told me. But then I also follow that up with, once in a while, you'll get some random person that says, I don't like the way that they positioned the couch in this living room. If it's a one-off thing, I'm not so worried about it. But if we're seeing it multiple times, well, that maybe if there's something we can do about it, then we should fix it. If they say, I don't like the street noise, there may not be much you can do about that, right? You can't change the location, but at least they know, okay, this is why buyers aren't interested. It's not because we staged it wrong, it's because they just don't like that noise. So maybe they reduce the price or something at that point. Maybe they're more willing to because they know that's out of their control. But if it's something they can control, then they may be able to fix it.
Buyers open houses, brokers open houses where you have all the,
Personally, I've never done that, but I know that is a strategy that some agents use. But yeah, I don't have any experience. Okay, so that's one thing I do throughout to help make sure that they're on top of when the appointments are, when they need to be out of the house, and what the buyers are saying about it. And I have one column that says, are they going to write an offer? Yes, no, or maybe, so that they can clearly see where they're at. Like, it's not fun to give them bad news, but I would much rather have it available to them so that they can look at it at their convenience than to hide it from them and just pretend like things are going great when really they're not. Because again, that can be another tool to help convince them that, hey, we should probably consider a price reduction when that time comes, if necessary. Dean, welcome. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Right. Yeah. That's true. Good point. Not normally. I usually decipher that on my own as an agent and say, do I feel like they're interested or not based on my conversation with the agent? A lot of times they will say they've decided against it for this reason, and they'll give me a specific reason why they said no. So obviously I can put a no on that. Or they said they're heavily considering this is one of their top few. So then that's when I'll put a maybe. I'm glad that you brought this up too, because you don't want to get yourself in trouble. Any guesses, has this ever happened, do you think, where an agent says, I'm going to be sending you an offer tonight, and then I don't get it? It happens a lot. Sometimes it's because the agent got too excited. They misread their client. Sometimes the client changes their mind. Sometimes another home pops. I mean, there could be 1,000 reasons why that happens, but that's always a little disappointing, right? So I want to avoid that with my sellers. So I don't tell them an offer is coming unless I have it in hand. Or if the agent is really like just waiting on a signature, I'm sending it soon. That's a little more like, okay, that's coming. Because I just don't want to get their hopes up and then have them suddenly drop. So threats of offers, yeah. Yeah. And to be honest with your sellers, it could, but there is a chance that they don't send anything. Right. Mm-hmm.
By another agency, this is how many days it's been on the market? Or
great question. They recently changed that, right, Dean? It used to be 90 days from the time you stop listing it to change to another brokerage before it would be considered a new listing where the days on market would reset. They recently changed that to just 30 though. So even if it's not a different agent, maybe it's the same agent, but you take it off the market for 30 days and put it back on. Maybe you do some changes during that time and, update the paint or whatever. In 30 days, you could relist it as a brand new listing. Is that correct? Yeah, which means either way. Yeah. Oh, it starts over immediately with. Oh, so if you switch. Okay, I didn't know that. It's good to know. Manipulation of. Yeah. Gotcha. Yep. Yeah. Because the same brokerage office. Gotcha. Sweet. Well, it is 11:30 now. I can stay to finish these slides, but if any of you have to go and have other commitments, feel free to get up and no offense taken. I know. Well, I tried. That's good. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, then you're getting to the point where you have offers and negotiations. I have a separate spreadsheet that I use. I know Command has a tool too. I just had my spreadsheet already built that I like it that way. But to me, well, I should ask this. When do you need to send an offer to a seller? What if the offer's, again, we're listing at 500,000. If the offer's for 350, do you even need to send that to seller? Trick question. You do. Is your obligation to send it to them? Yeah. And I just tell them this is a low ball offer. No, that's part of our fiduciary duties is to present all offers to the seller. I don't remember which category that falls under, but full disclosure probably. I don't know. But yeah, that is something that we need to do. Here's how I do it. I like to put it in a Google Drive, put any and all offers in a Google Drive. And then I have a spreadsheet that I built that will specify all these different numbers that matter to the seller. Because really, one price could be higher than another, but that may be a worse offer, right? Because maybe that higher price is coming at a cost of $10,000 in concessions, whereas this other offer for $5,000 less doesn't ask for concessions. So maybe that nets them more, right? There's also the home warranty. There's several other factors that could ultimately make net a seller more or less. And so I want to them to clearly see which one of those is giving you the most money, as well as what type of financing do they have? What kind of inclusions or exclusions are they asking for? You know, all the material that is necessary for them to do it. But to just send them a copy of the Rep C is hard for them to decipher if they've never really seen it before, and most people have very little experience with that. So I like to give that to them because that's my duty, but I also like to put it in a spreadsheet so that they can easily see, compare one offer to another. If we get multiple offers, or if they're at a point where they may consider doing one of those, what I'll usually do is I'll put it in the spreadsheet, I'll upload the data, and then I'll send them a text and say, hey, just want to let you know we received an offer. Here's the link to that spreadsheet so that you can see it. I'd love to talk you through it after you have a chance to look at it. So that way they look at it first, come up with whatever questions they have, and then, yeah, I want to have a conversation with them. If we have multiple offers, which isn't as common right now, but could happen still, and maybe down the road soon, hopefully that happens. But then I'll have like maybe a Zoom call or something, or in some cases at their house, go through the different offers, especially if there's some really close ones, to really help them figure out which one's best for them. So that's the part of it. The other benefit to getting multiple offers is that you can you have a little more leverage as a seller. You can usually get away with doing less in seller paid concessions, or having tighter deadlines, or having earnest money become non-refundable a little sooner than the 3-week kind of typical financing and appraisal deadline. So there's different things you can do if you're getting multiple offers to help create a stronger offer for your seller. Okay, then you've got the contract to close process. You're under contract. There's going to be things that you're going to want to do throughout that period to make sure that you're on top of it. I highly recommend, especially as a new agent, but for any agent, getting a transaction coordinator, someone that's going to help take care of your paperwork for you, because that's some stuff that can really hurt you if you don't do it right. They'll also help you keep track of deadlines and things that are important to the sellers. Do you guys already have connections with a transaction coordinator? Oh, with Jeanette, perfect. As a new agent, she's who I use also. So even later, I think that's one of the least expensive ways to create some massive leverage for you in your time is by hiring a transaction coordinator. And you don't have to be at your computer all day, every day, waiting for signatures, sending docs. She's already at her computer. That's what she does. So highly recommend that going forward. And then post-close systems. How are you going to stay in touch with your clients? How are you going to follow up with them? What processes do you want to have to make sure that you stay in touch and are still creating value and adding value for them in their new place now that they've moved? Okay, any ahas? Good, I'm glad, thank you. I'm glad you felt that. It's a lot of work, right? But just like with anything, the more you do it, the more practice you have, the more prepared you are, the better off you'll be. And the more it'll feel natural for you to have these kinds of conversations. Because it is, I mean, there's millions of different reasons why people sell, but these conversations we have, you can kind of boil them down usually into certain categories, and you can get really good at kind of overcoming those objections and those types of categories. Okay, we already went through most of this. This one I would say is good to look at and help you build your business. Again, this comes from the NAR data. This one's from 2 years ago, but it probably hasn't changed a whole lot since last year. But what are sellers looking for, and how can you take these items that matter to them and implement them into your business in a systematic way to make sure that you're doing it? Okay, we didn't get through some of this stuff, but all right, any last questions? I didn't use the slides much, but we talked about all this stuff. It's a good one. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. People love that personal touch.
How's your pendant?
It's all right. Yeah. I've gotten compliments on it before.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
But definitely something you want to have. It kind of speaks to your level of professionalism, right? I'm not saying it has to be perfect, but if it's sloppy and illegible, unlegible, not readable. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, crazy. Same here. Hmm. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Huh. That's very cool. To make it look as real as you can. Nice. Exclamation points. Love that. Hmm. But it saves you a lot of time. In Scarlet. Mhm. Mhm. Awesome. Good tip. Yeah. Especially in the mail, because 90% of mail today is either just ads or bills. So yeah. So you get a little excited when you get something that's a little bit better, right? Something personal. Yeah. Kind of a template. Yeah. Yeah. It's all about creating systems and templates and things that you can just keep reusing, but alter enough to where it is unique every time. Love that. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the one thing I will close with for this class today is that I think there is a common misconception that you have to have the most fancy listing presentation and that it's got to look the nicest. Yes, it needs to look good and that needs to be there. But I think what people often overlook is the conversation that you have with them and how involved they are and how many questions you're asking to them. If they're, you can have the best presentation, but if it takes you 2 minutes to ask them questions about what matters to them, and then 90 minutes to explain your process, something's going on, right? Your chances of success are very low. Whereas if you're able to have a conversation about what their past experiences are, what their future looks like, if they're successful with this, if they're not successful with this, what is success? What if we get a lower price? What if we get a higher price? You know, what could that do for like all those different questions? Have a really in-depth conversation, and then at the end give them a little bit of a presentation. What I've started to do lately is actually drop off my listing packet to them a couple of days in advance and have them look over it. So that way they know ahead of time kind of what I'm about, what my process looks like, so that when I get there, I can first address any questions they may have about it, get a couple of things that they liked about the process, and ask questions that kind of help confirm that they feel comfortable moving forward with me. Like, what did you like about this process? What stood out to you? How do you feel like this gives you the best chance to succeed? And then we can really just dive into them and get to know them and their process that way, or in their goals and systems, so that we can save that time for them. That way that kind of impression is left in a more meaningful way, I think, than to just have this 90-minute awesome presentation. Does that make sense?
What should time frame be? What is a
Yeah.
good measure? Because I don't want to extend the
Yeah.
time.
I think that's a great question to ask them, almost not in those words, but some people will want you in and out 30 minutes and that's all I want. Like I had one client just very recently, he was a close friend of mine, but he's like straight down to business. He didn't, I don't know, he didn't really care that his wife was involved. I tried to invite her, but she didn't want to be involved. He just wanted to handle everything and just basically said, hey, I want to hire you and just do your thing. Right. But I still wanted to like have a conversation with him, but I could tell that he just was happy with me and had seen that I had been successful or whatever. And he's just like, yeah, just do it. So that conversation was about 30 minutes of my listing presentation with him. And we just closed last week and, they had high reviews and whatever. But most of the time it's gonna be longer than that. And there have been times where I was there for 2 or 3 hours or had scheduled a second appointment to kind of go back and go, because either they weren't sure about some things or they wanted to go way more in depth. So I kind of just read the room on different people and their timeline to figure out how much time you really should spend. But in terms of percentages, I would say that at least more than 50% of the time, they should be the ones talking, because you're asking good questions to get them involved and learning about them more so than you're trying to teach them about you. So, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nice.
There's 6 basic questions, but the National Association came out with the first. So we have 6 basic questions. Why you? Why your company? All 6.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
What's going on in the market? How much do you charge? What do you get my home?
I think that was 5, but I don't remember.
Obviously there's a, and then I always ask them after these 6 questions, are there anything else that you for you? See, I'm already closed. I'm already looking to close it.
Mm-hmm.
When I say close it, open them up to the opportunity to work with you.
Yep.
And then every conversation always starts off the same.
Yeah.
3 things can happen. What are the 3 things that can happen?
That they decide not to work with you.
Yeah, like I said,
That you decide not to work with them, or that you agree to work together. Yeah. Yeah. Or it could be that they want to list for, like I kind of talked about earlier, they want to list for way too high, and you've, despite your conversation with them, they're still way up in the clouds. Like that may not be worth your time because you already know what's going to happen. Yeah, that could go with that. Or you decide to work together. What's that?
Is that interview going to come off? Like sell the house. So obviously that's a big deal about it too. I sold a split entry, 60 slabs, 2 summers.
Yeah.
Terrible shape. They had not
Classic.
house is my own house. So I didn't have to sell it, but I did everything I could to market.
Yeah. You know? Mhm.
They didn't want to.
Mhm. And on that note,
It was a guy.
oof, wow.
This is where we're.
Yeah. Yeah, it was exactly. That's what I was going to say is on that note, the market also kind of helps you determine how many repairs need to be done. I still think in most cases, if you have new carpet in that case, probably in any market, you still would have gotten more money. Still would have been a good idea to do that. Yeah. But there are certain things that may not really net you more money based on what the market's doing. So today's market, is it harder or easier to sell a house than it was 2 years ago? It's harder, which means your house has to be dressed up a little more. I'll steal this analogy from Brett Wild. If you guys have met him. If you are going to the high school dance and you're the only guy there and you want to dance and there's 20 girls there that want to dance, how many chances are you going to get to dance that night? As many as you want, right? But if the football team shows up and the basketball team shows up, does it matter how you look and how you're dressed? It totally does. So like the competition of what's going on around your home, if there's a lot of homes for sale, you've either got to do better on your pricing, which no seller probably wants to do that, or you've got to dress up your house more. It's got to look the nicest, right? So you got to up your game. But if there's no competition anywhere around you, you can get away with doing a little more, right? So even though there were a ton of homes for sale 3 years ago, compared to the amount of people buying them, it was almost as if there was no competition. And so you could get away with not dressing up your home very nice and still get a good deal for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good question. In some cases, maybe, but I usually try to protect myself by tying it to them. So in other words, like one example is I may agree to reimburse them for something as opposed to pay for it myself. Meaning, like for the staging, for example, if I decided to do that, I may say at the closing table, I will reimburse you this much instead of paying for it. Because what happens if I pay for it and then they cancel or it doesn't sell? Now I'm just out $2,000 and they had no skin in the game. So I want them to have skin in the game, but at the same time, if I am willing to pay for it, I'll do it just as a reimbursement so that it makes sure that I at least get paid and it works out that way.
So that, typically sells about 10% more.
I wouldn't quote that exactly. I would say the studies that I've looked at, they say that they can sell for up to 10% more if they're staged as opposed to if they're not. In my gut, I feel like that's probably pretty high. So it's probably somewhere around, I don't know, 4 or 5%, but I don't have any data for that.
Just because the number of days on market.
Yeah, it'll help you sell quicker because you're getting more attention on that house, and it'll help buyers envision themselves in that a lot more. And so because of that, I mean, if staging costs two grand for a month, but you are able to sell that house for $5,000 more, I mean, that's a good investment. That's a good return on investment, right? 150% in a month. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty confident in saying, especially in today's market, that if you stage your home, you're going to get more for it. But yeah, so the way I handle it, and again, this is every agent's probably going to have a different process. If it's not going to be staged, like if they're moved out and it's going to be empty, if I can't convince them to get the staging furniture in themselves, then I will pay for it in the form of reimbursement or 50-50 or something like that. But if they're already living in the home, chances are you can get away with using whatever they've already got. More than anything, you may have things that they remove from the home to make it more stage worthy, right? Like more presentable. And you can either have that conversation with them, or the girl I referenced at Aloe and Elm, she can also have that conversation, but I think she charges $250 for a consultation like that. So you can either pay for it, or your clients can pay for it, but she'll go in and go through their house with them and go room by room and make suggestions and tell them, how to rearrange furniture or remove certain things from walls, things like that to make it kind of use what they've already got, but yeah, so less hassle. But yeah. Yeah. And that when in my business, I eat that cost. I just pay the 250 if that's the case, if that's the route I'm going to go. I'm willing to put that risk, but $2,000 was probably higher than what I'd be willing to risk without having them really be invested. So, okay. Sweet. Well, you guys are awesome. Thanks for staying extra time. There's still so much more to talk about. This is this is not a hard one. It's in depth, right? So hopefully you got something out of it, but know that you're not done learning about how to make your listings presentation and that whole thing. In fact, I don't know how often Clay teaches his Win the Sellers class.
Yeah, he does that. We'll do probably January, February.
That's
listing class.
yeah. See, we had 2 hours to try and get through all the stuff that he goes through in a day.
We could spend all day in class.
True.
That makes sense. I have a fun one that I love.
Mm.
Kids. I just tell kids, I say,
There you go. Yeah,
so
kind of incentivize them a little bit.
fire drill. That means all the toys, you have to have a plan. Your beds are made,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, because you can't go to school if your bed's not made, and some comes to see your house. How about, I had teenage girls that have fire drill. Teenage girls